Charlie, although I think your avatar says Zack, but welcome
Oh, it
to
does.
C&C
Let me fix
Live.
that.
Yeah, welcome to C&C Live. We're on here right after the first, and judging by what happened in the debate, I would venture to guess only presidential debate that we are going to get in 2024, and an early one at that. Back in 2020, all the debates were held in September and October. That has been consistent the past few cycles. It was very different this time around. The campaigns bypassed the commission on presidential debates and decided to set one up independently with CNN, though CNN did agree to simulcast it across other networks. And we got it near the end of June, so still, Charlie, over 4 months away from the presidential election. Neither of these candidates have been officially nominated by their parties yet. And right off the bat, Charlie, might be a good thing that this for Joe Biden that this election is still over 4 months away, because it was a rough performance. What were your main takeaways just to start off with?
Yeah, well, I think one of the main things that I noticed was if you look at the actual substance of what they were saying, I think Biden certainly had more to say, and what he was saying was certainly more linked to the questions that were being asked. But Trump seemed a lot more confident in what he was saying and didn't stutter as much. And I think in the long run, that importance and that depth of what is being said is going to be remembered less than how Trump presented what he said.
Yeah, I think that the main thing that was on a lot of voters' minds as they came in to this first presidential debate, and like I said, probably going to end up being the only presidential debate, though we may get a vice presidential debate if Trump ever announces who his vice presidential candidate is. But I think that the main thing on a lot of voters' minds is, are these two candidates, specifically Biden, but really both candidates, are they mentally fit enough to be the president of the United States? And it felt like Joe Biden left some questions there to people who do not fully follow politics especially closely. Now, to those that are really in the loop on politics, like Charlie, you and I are, I don't think that there's quite as much question about Biden's mental competency. But to the average voter who maybe hasn't been following this election super closely, but maybe really tuned in tonight and definitely had a question about the fact that there were two candidates on the stage, one of whom is 81 years old, will be 82 before he would potentially be inaugurated for a second term, and one who's 78 years old, this looked better for Donald Trump. He looked like the more mentally fit candidate. Joe Biden did not. There was a lot of stuff coming from the Trump campaign about how Joe Biden was going to be jacked up on drugs. It was very, very obvious that if he was jacked up on drugs today, those drugs did not work, especially early in the debate. I'd argue Biden did get stronger as the debate went on, but he froze a couple times. He couldn't fully get his ideas out. He had a lot of chances to really hammer Trump. He failed at that. He stuttered a lot, seemed not entirely sure what he was talking about. And again, he did get better as the debate went on, but Trump was not like that. Now, what he was actually saying, if you paid attention to that, was mostly hot garbage. But that's, I don't think, the thing that most people will come away with. The other big takeaway that I have, Charlie, is that I had kind of forgotten just how difficult it is to debate Donald Trump. And here's why. It's not that he's a really good debater, at least not in a traditional sense. He's really good at just giving so many lies in a row. Every single sentence contains two or three lies, and that it makes it essentially impossible to fact check, because he's living in a completely different reality that if the other candidate or a moderator wanted to fact check it all, they can't. It would take up literally the rest of the time. There's just too many lies being told. And also, I know the rules of the debate did not allow for any level of fact checking. Well, they really should have. This was an absolute disgrace that none of these claims by Trump were fact checked, Charlie.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think one of the other tactics that really falls into Trump's favor is that he is very good at focusing on a couple of issues specifically that being the border as one of them, and Biden's seemed weakness in international policy, particularly with Ukraine. And I think if he really continues to just hammer those home, and I think by doing that, when people think about what happened in the debate, they're not going to remember the one or two times that maybe Trump stuttered or something, and they're not going to remember some of the lies that he told, mostly because there were just too many of them. Biden also did say some stuff that was not correct, but Trump makes the focus of the debate about his value and his opponent's issues instead of focusing on some of the actual questions that were being asked. And I think that is certainly for him a big advantage.
Yeah, I think that that's true. I like also Donald Trump would not answer the questions, and he was rarely pushed to answer them, at least not until he had finished his rambling about whatever topic he wanted to. Then maybe he'd be told, hey, you have a good 40 seconds left. Do you want to actually answer the question? And then maybe he'll say something, or maybe he won't. But that's kind of how it went throughout the entire debate. There really was no live fact checking, no making him actually answer the question. So Trump was definitely able to use that in his favor. So in that regard, I think that the moderators failed. I thought that the questions that they asked, I thought were mostly quality questions. Where I think they failed is kind of in what they didn't ask. There were no questions about the fact that one of the candidates had been convicted on 34 felony counts. No questions about his calls to suspend the Constitution. No questions about his rhetoric echoing Adolf Hitler, right? We cannot treat this as if it's a normal campaign and a normal debate, because it's not. We've never been in a situation when one of the candidates is called for suspending the Constitution and has been convicted on 34 felony counts. And by the way, he's arguably the front runner for the presidency. So we have to treat it like it's not normal. Now, with that being said, I also think that while the mics being muted during the other candidates' response is probably a good idea. It actually probably ended up hurting Joe Biden, because I think that if the mics weren't going to be muted, then Trump would be interrupting constantly, just as he did in 2020, which isn't good for Biden in terms of getting a word out. But a lot of what he said, it probably would have been better if he didn't say, and if Trump had just gone on a rant and shown what his character truly is, because he was actually today, I felt like he seemed, at least in his demeanor, somewhat normal, which is kind of a side of Trump that we don't generally see, which is, I guess, somewhat surprising. So, like, it probably would have been helpful for Biden if Trump had been interrupting him constantly, because of the substance of the debate was not actually focused on. It would have been helpful if Trump's character issues had been highlighted more.
Yeah, and real quick, I did wanted to mention that there was no direct mention of some of the things that you mentioned by the moderators. Trump and Biden did end up talking a little bit about a couple of the issues that you did bring up. But
Yeah.
real quick, I did also wanted to mention that our good friend Zack is here. Hi, Zack. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. What are your? Do you have any initial thoughts on the debate?
Well, I missed part of it, but I watched most of it, and I honestly thought overall it was pretty terrible. To be honest, I thought both. I honestly I think Biden did really badly, which is sad to say. Not because the points he were making were bad, but he seemed to be struggling like very. I'm sure you guys already talked about this, but seemed to be struggling a lot with the speaking aspect, which, as much as I don't personally think that disqualifies him for president, I know that a lot of America does view that as a big issue, and so I think that that was a big problem. Also, I was hearing you, Colin, talk about how you actually think it would have helped Biden to have the mics not be muted. I was actually thinking the exact same thing during the debate, because it would have just made Trump look like an asshole, which he is, but it would have highlighted that. And yeah, I think it actually is a loss for Biden that there was the muting.
I don't think you're going to find many people that will say that Joe Biden won this debate. And again, on substance, I thought he was relatively strong. We'll get more in the weeds of what was actually discussed in a minute, but we're still just starting with overall takeaways, right? Joe Biden, his ideas sounded better, as we expected, because Trump's ideas are incoherent for the most part, and the ones that aren't incoherent are genuinely horrifying. But that's not what's mostly going to be talked about tomorrow morning on the morning news, in the newspapers, and wherever people get their news nowadays, which is sadly social media at this point. What's going to be talked about is the Biden's continued slipping up. And speaking of social media, I think this is another great point. Like, I will not be one to confuse social media for real life, at least not entirely, right? Because I don't run the Jamal Bowman campaign. But anyway, on social media, I did see a lot of people who I follow on Twitter, who I see a lot of posts for in general, that don't really generally tweet about politics, right? A lot of sports people in particular that were just commenting about how sad this debate looks on the country, how really
I noticed that as well.
Horrifying, horrifying the whole thing was, how like Biden, it looks like he shouldn't be up there. And again, there's a lot of people that are going to tune into an event like this who maybe don't have much prior context. That's what a lot of these people are going to be seeing. And as much as we can say, look, obviously Biden kind of bombed in a lot of ways, but hey, I'll take the president who's a bad debater, who lost this debate over the guy who wants to suspend the United States Constitution. The average voter probably doesn't know that, and that's not what's going to be talked about. And the moderators also did a bad job bringing up Trump's issues with that, the many things that are completely disqualifying for him as a candidate. And as a result, what you see on social media is a lot of people saying this debate should be disqualifying for Joe Biden. They need to find somebody at the convention to replace him, because he cannot continue through with this. He cannot be the president if he's like this, which I disagree with. I think that his record speaks for itself. He has a very strong record that he, so clearly in the mental state that he's in, he was able to accomplish all of that, which means that he can accomplish the job of the presidency. He already has done that. So, but again, that's not going to be the main takeaway, because most people don't know about the Biden administration's successes, and Biden certainly didn't do a good job tonight of telling them.
And I think I don't think it's completely unfair for most of the public to, who may not have, for a lot of people who don't have as much political knowledge as maybe we do, or other people in politics do, to sort of see this as really bad for Biden. I mean, you could, in my opinion, you could, and from where I was sitting, you could really like barely hear what he was saying in some parts. Like, without the subtitles, I would not have known what he was saying, which is a big problem, considering that you can't actually know his opinions on issues if you can't hear what he's saying. And so I think for a lot of people that don't have prior context, this debate made Biden look very bad. Now, will that actually have much of an effect on the outcome of the election? That's probably not. But I think I understand some of the social media pushback.
Yeah, Charlie, I'll get to you in just a sec, but I do want to tackle a couple of those points. First of all, presidential debates, generally, there's not really any significant evidence that makes it seem like they do have a big impact on elections.
Right.
And especially given that this one's so far before the election, that might be even more true. On the other hand, I think that given the context about the age issues, how everyone's really wants to see how the age issue is affecting the race. I think that this debate could have a big effect in a negative way on Biden. Then the other thing about his voice sounding raspy, yeah, that was noticeable right from the get-go. It did seem to get better throughout the debate, but it was still not great. We have learned that according to numerous sources, Joe Biden has been battling through a cold the last couple of days, which is really the most unfortunate timing he could have hoped for. Then as for what I said about the convention, about people calling for them to replace him at the convention, let's be very clear. Joe Biden is not being replaced at the convention. Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee for president. That did not change tonight. And Joe Biden is still very capable of being the president of the United States, as he has shown throughout his presidency, although admittedly he failed to show tonight. I also would like to give a little bit of credit to a news organization that I've been very hard on at times, which is the New York Times, who this was their headline halfway through the debate, roughly around the first commercial break. It was, Donald Trump made wild assertions and stretched the truth. President Biden stumbled at times, his voice raspy. Get updates. That is not exactly what I expected the New York Times analysis to be, but actually I will give them credit for that.
That's pretty good. I think that's very fair.
Yeah, well done to the New York Times there. I think that is a decent a decent description. Their current headline right now is Biden struggles as Trump blusters, which I would say is also fairly accurate as well.
Yeah. Again, Trump, when he talked, he actually seemed fine, except for the whole Gulf exchange, which we'll get to later.
Yeah, let's get to that right now.
Let's kind of start that. That was one of the most absurd things I've heard at a debate. Joe Biden took the bait there, and Joe Biden really should not have taken the bait there. Yes. There was absolutely no reason to continue talking about that issue. It was foolish. I do not know what he was thinking. One of the weirdest things I've seen at a debate, and I've seen some weird things at debates.
Yeah, it really felt like towards the end there, the debate just went kind of completely off the rails. Seems like
I do think
just ignoring the questions, they were just basically just insulting each other.
Yeah, I do think that just ignoring the questions was a constant throughout the debate, especially for Trump, but also for Biden at times, which in some instances might have been for the best. The questions were not always great, but certainly the debate about golf is quite possibly the single worst thing I've seen. And any other kind of overarching takeaways before we move on to the specifics?
I had another one about specifically about the ignoring questions thing. Trump was asked multiple times about political violence and whether he would accept the election results, and did not give a straight answer every time. And in fact, in some of the cases, literally just ignored the question entirely and talked about something entirely different. Like, I think that is a huge red flag. And I'm also kind of disappointed about how little pushback they gave that. Like, yes, they asked the question multiple times, but he's not directly saying that political violence is bad. That's a pretty big deal.
He did eventually, by the way, after the third time being asked, he did eventually say that he would support the results of the election.
Sort of.
Really. He said that he would support the results of the election if it was fair and secure, which, let's be very, very clear here. The 2020 election was a safe and secure election. The Cybersecurity Infrastructure Administration, CISA, they called it the most secure election in American history. The director of CISA, Chris Krebs, was fired by Donald Trump for saying that. Donald Trump lost over 60 lawsuits about the election because he was able to produce zero evidence of widespread fraud. Despite looking for months, he of course, did not accept the election in 2020 and stuck a mob on the Capitol. By the way, when he was asked about January 6th today, he immediately pivoted to talking about Russia. And then when he was asked directly to condemn political violence, he essentially said yeah, I condemn it, but I shouldn't be the one having to condemn it. Well, given that Donald Trump was the one that incited political violence, specifically the mob at the Capitol, and has also called for a bloodbath if Joe Biden wins this election. Yes, you should have to condemn political violence, but no one would be at all surprised if he doesn't, because that is exactly who Donald Trump is.
Mm-hmm. I thought there should have been more pushback anyway, though, in general, but also on
yes.
that question.
Well, and I think the moderators just did a bad job in general bringing up the biggest issues with Trump. Again, this dude should be automatically disqualified just on the basis of calling for the suspension of the Constitution. And yet, how many times was that mentioned? 0. Now, sure, should he have been? Should Biden have brought that up? Of course, he should have. But also, the moderators should have. My one other overarching take of this debate is that Biden really, really, really needs to fire every single person that was involved in prepping him for this debate.
Absolutely.
All of them should be fired. Joe Biden is a guy who, in general, has good political instincts. And those did not come through. He spent, the last 10-ish days prepping for the debate at Camp David, and his advisors essentially made him stick to policy, gave him essentially nothing to truly go on the attack on Trump for his felony convictions, for all the anti-democracy stuff. It's time that he plays hardball, and he's the type of guy that we know when actually, we know that he actually can, but apparently his advisors don't want to, so it didn't happen, and that is really a huge mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that really Biden, in terms of campaign and policy, did not push nearly as hard as he should have. I think Trump definitely won in that aspect. He showed what he wanted to do, what he plans to do. He showed the issues, what that Biden has with what he's going to do. Biden did not do that as much, and I think if he was going to really save himself in the second half of this debate, he needed to ramp that up more, and he just didn't.
Yeah, and I also I think that Biden should have hit Trump on the projection issue a lot more. When Biden finally mentions his convictions and Trump goes Joe Biden was weaponizing the justice system against me. Yeah. He's done all these things. We have a Democratic judge. New York City, the jury was filled with Democrats, all that sort of stuff. A Democratic attorney, and then that's responsible for his conviction. Joe Biden should have gone on the offense and said, okay, this is just a classic example of projection. You're right here. You're promising that if you win a second term, you will weaponize the Justice Department. Donald Trump is calling for retribution against his political opponents, saying that he's going to lock them up. He's been saying that he'd lock up Hillary Clinton for years. That's been one of his central campaign promises now for 3 election cycles. And furthermore, he tried to obstruct justice when he was president by firing FBI Director James Comey, firing numerous attorneys, trying to fire Robert Mueller. He fired Jeff Sessions, all in an attempt to obstruct justice in the Mueller investigation. So Joe Biden could have and probably should have gone on offense on all of those things, but instead he did not. And I think that was also a problem.
Yeah, and I think Trump, the whole debate was seriously just digging into Biden, and every other word was basically just something against Biden. And honestly, in my opinion, that makes him look like an asshole. But I think in terms of the debate, it actually gave him a slight edge, because Biden, in a lot of cases, it looked like he didn't even really have anything to say against Trump, which is of course not true, but it was concerning how little he sort of I guess said things that Trump was doing badly.
Yeah, I will also say Trump, in my opinion, he came off as one of the most full of himself guys. He was constantly on all these problems, such as his convictions. I had nothing to do with it. It's everybody's fault but me. And also I was the best president in history. No one's done more for this group than I have. Just constant stream of just like bragging, and it's okay to brag some, right? You're there to sell your record, but when you don't put any actual substance behind it, right? I don't think Trump actually gave a single concrete policy idea because he's incapable of talking about policy. And I mean, I was watching MSNBC before the debate, and Lawrence O'Donnell said that like a great first question to Donald Trump, who has this plan to eliminate income tax and replace it with tariffs, which would essentially be a massive, massive sales tax on the American people. To ask him, what are tariffs?
Yeah.
Or what's the difference between Medicare and Medicaid? Ask both candidates that, right? Because a problem is like Donald Trump he's able to like ramble for a while and about things and like kind of give a general idea, but once he's actually forced to give like factual information, he doesn't have any, so it would look very bad on him. Now, is that the best question to actually ask in the debate? No, but it certainly would have been telling about Donald Trump. Let's move on to kind of the more specifics of this debate, but first of all, just a reminder that you are watching this live stream recap of the presidential election on the C&C Talks YouTube channel. Make sure to please subscribe. You can head over to Twitter and follow us there at CC Talks Podcast. Charlie's at CC Talks Charlie over on Twitter. We have a Discord server that you can join, cctalks.com/Discord. Our podcasts available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Just type in C Talks and find us there. Also, please leave comments with any questions that you may have. We will try to answer them on the live stream, and we'll show them up here. In fact, we just got a comment from Morris Phillips. Do not believe that this is the Morris affiliated with this podcast. He unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. Says President Biden's voice wasn't strong, but his substance was a lot deeper. Yes, we've covered that. We absolutely agree with that. With that, let's move on. Let's move on to kind of the specifics. Let's start where the debate started, which was with questions, Charlie, about the economy, which is Biden right out of the gate. It was very clear he was probably battling a cold. He did have a couple of good opening lines, hard to hear. In my opinion.
I could not hear him.
No, you couldn't. He mentioned Scranton in like his second sentence or something, which I found amusing.
Yeah, and just real quick, we'll move on a little bit further in the debate. I found it. I don't know why I found it so funny, but when Trump was saying billions and billions of dollars, it was really funny to me for some reason.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right.
What were you saying?
Yeah. No, I think with the economy, Biden actually, despite stumbling a decent amount, I think he did an okay job just talking about his accomplishments without getting too in the weeds on policy, which is, I think, important. It's a place that I think he failed at some places in the debate because, again, this was kind of John Kerry's problem in 2004, what I would call the dumbing down of American politics. The people don't want to hear a lot about the specifics of policy because it goes over most people's heads. They want to hear just broadly, what are you going to do to make our lives better? What have you done? What are you going to do? And I think Biden did an okay job, at least opening in doing that. Trump, for his part, he started out right away with lies. He was talking about how the economy was the best economy that the U.S. has ever had when he was president, and that everyone in the world was like, wow, you have such a good economy over there. A reminder, Donald Trump is the first president since Herbert Hoover to leave office with fewer jobs than he came into office with. The Trump economy was not good. He also said that Biden created the COVID mandates and Trump got us out of the pandemic. I think he might have forgotten which of them was president when, because we were certainly not out of the pandemic when Trump left office.
Yeah, we have another comment again from Morris Phillips real quick. I've never heard a candidate call another candidate a liar. Have you? Colin, have we before?
Yeah, I think we've seen it a few times.
From these specific two people.
Yeah, and going in both directions. And Biden did point out some of Trump's lies throughout the debate. Often said like everything he said there was a lie, and he was right. It doesn't necessarily look the best because, again, the American people still heard it. They didn't hear the specifics on why it was wrong, though. So, again, probably point Trump there, unfortunately, and it's why he's so good at winning debates by just lying his way through them.
Yeah, he is incredibly good at essentially lying his way through debates.
Yeah, another comment from that opening segment on the economy. He had absolutely no idea how tariffs worked. It was very clear. Do either of you have any comments on that opening segment?
I did notice that you did comment on that on X at the very beginning of the debate, and yeah, I agree. What he said about the tariffs just does not make any sense. And Zach, what are your thoughts on this? Because I agree with Colin on this one.
Well, I didn't see that part because, like I said,
did you miss the first part of the debate?
I did. I missed the first part of the debate, but he also talked about the tariffs later on, and it was something he slammed Biden with pretty often. And yeah, it was very clear that he just sort of was told, "Oh yeah, you put this thing in place, and just say that Biden, couldn't do better." It was very clear he didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah. Correct. I tweeted out fairly early, like, I cannot keep up with Trump's lies. This is why debating him so hard. He just makes up his own facts. CNN's Daniel Dale on Twitter tried to do a good job of fact checking Trump during the debate. Again, just a fraction of the people actually watching the debate saw that. But he claimed that Biden has only created jobs for illegal immigrants. So yeah.
I was just gonna add that, like, also the lies he was making during this were just kind of the most hilarious stuff. He literally just said all the time, no matter what the topic was, my campaign, my administration had the best blah blah blah. Insert whatever topic they were talking about. It was actually ridiculous how many times he said that. And just all of them basically were untrue. But he just kept saying he was the best at everything, which is something he's done many times before. And it's unfortunately actually a strategy that I feel like has worked for him in the past, even though it's just complete lying. It's about what the American public is hearing, and he's just saying he's the best at everything. So
yeah, and once again, it's a complete disgrace that CNN did not allow their moderators to live fact check this debate to at least some extent.
Absolutely,
they only have 90 minutes. I think that would have taken a bit too long.
Well, I get that, but I think it's more important than moving on to other subjects, because it's more important that in what the American people do hear, that they're hearing factual information.
I absolutely agree with you on that aspect, but what I'm suggesting is attempting to give a reason as to potentially why they did not do that.
I agree. I just think it's malpractice.
Yeah, I agree. However, I do think that not fact checking it did certainly help with the flow of the debate, and I think really you could have the candidates essentially call each other out when they see lies. And we have another comment again from
I don't think that would work. I don't think you can have the candidates call.
No, I don't think you can, and I think this debate proved that you can't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also I think it was unfair too, because it just made Biden look so much worse to not be fact checking again, because Biden wasn't lying. So
Biden said less untrue things.
Yeah, I think that this is an important thing to mention.
Saying that he didn't say anything wrong is not true.
Yeah, there was definitely unfactual information coming from Biden, as there is from essentially every candidate that's ever debated. I think that with Biden, it was less malicious. I think that a lot of it was him just getting facts wrong or over exaggerating. But with Trump, it's very obviously just, I have no idea where he pulled that out of. It's just completely made up.
Where he just inserted the word best in front of something.
Exactly. That does seem to be Trump's strategy half the time. We have the biggest this, we have the best that. Yeah, no, that's Trump for you. Moving on to what I think was the single worst moment for Biden in the debate. It happened fairly early on. He was talking, I don't remember exactly what it was about, but he had an almost Mitch McConnell like freeze up where he couldn't find words for several seconds, and then he goes, and then we finally beat Medicare, and then Trump goes and said, like, yeah, you're right, you did beat Medicare, Joe. And it's like the stumbling is one thing, especially for how long it went on, like easily 10 to 15 seconds. But then the words that come after that are just so unbelievably awful. I don't even know what to do with. Like, we finally beat Medicare. That's a massive screw up.
Yeah, that was a disaster, and I think really that if you're looking at looking between the two, like who is ahead in the debate right now, I think that put Biden in a hole immediately, and I don't think he really recovered from that. I think honestly he just went downhill from there in some aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point I felt like it was over. Biden could not win the debate after that point. I felt like it was really bad, that particular comment. And then Trump, I wasn't sure after he said it whether Trump would be aware enough to hammer him on it, but Trump absolutely did hammer him on it. Now, of course, Joe Biden is a supporter of Medicare and Social Security. Donald Trump and the Republicans have promised cuts to it. Also, unfortunate timing, given that I was in a Twitter debate yesterday with somebody over the question of whether Biden was pro cutting Social Security. I gave several examples of how he was not, and apparently now today he kind of ruined that. Although it was obviously a slip up, just about the worst possible slip up you could ever have.
Yeah. Can I just quickly highlight this comment here that I thought was just spot on, again by Morris Phillips. Yeah, I think it's exactly right. I think the reason Trump is running is completely. I mean, he even talked about, and I thought this was one of the stupidest parts of the debate, when he talked about how the only reason he was running was because
of how bad a job Biden was doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, like, it just makes him sound like a rich asshole, which he is. And
he said, by the way, that he wanted Biden to be a good president. Dude, no, you didn't. From the very beginning, you did. That is not at all what you wanted.
I thought that Biden's response to that was quite funny, though, with like calling Trump a whiner, which is completely accurate. And
yes,
I think
it absolutely is.
And I honestly think that a lot of the reason, or at least part of the reason why he is running, aside from the part that was also, he's, of course, in some serious legal trouble that could perhaps be solved by being president. Other than that, he also, I think, just can't lose as a person, just like is such a baby with these things and just feels that he needs to win now because he lost earlier.
Absolutely correct.
Now, I do want to get to the somewhat in the middle of the debate when they were discussing the southern border, and in relation to the southern border, and when they were discussing the issues that is plaguing America with drugs. What did you guys' thoughts on those two and how they were linked, how they weren't linked, stuff such as that?
I thought Biden's response was not great. I don't think he really answered the question very well. He sort of talked about some things that weren't super related. And then was that near the time when they got into the Gulf argument?
No, that was later.
No, that was near the end
later.
of the debate.
And that was right near the end.
Trump's answer was, of course, just the default Republican response, which is just, they're coming in from the border. Then also go ahead.
I think Biden blew his response to the question about the border, and he started off on the right foot. He started to talk about how he had created this bipartisan agreement in Congress, specifically in the Senate, about solving the border, and how he was doing this work on the border. And then, so I assumed from there, naturally, he was going to go to how then all of a sudden Republicans decided to sink their own bill because Donald Trump came in and said, I don't want you to solve the border because I want to run on the issue. And essentially, if Biden say, yeah, it shows that like Donald Trump doesn't actually care about the problem. He only cares about it if he can be the one to fix it. And that would have been, I think, a great response. But he did not. That's not what he ended up actually doing. And then Trump kind of brutally hammered him on it right afterwards. So it was rough. However, right before that in the debate, there was a small section on abortion. Trump had an incoherent rant on it. Unsurprisingly, Biden, he could have really hammered Trump. It was not that, unfortunately for him. Now, Trump, he did say that the Supreme Court justices he appointed just so happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade. Yeah, I'm sure that it just so happened that way, and that's not half the reason that you put them on the court. He also made the usual disgusting claim from Republicans that abortion is happening after birth, which is just obviously false. But once again, another example.
How would that work?
That's euthanization.
It wouldn't work. It's literally euthanization. It's not a thing that happens. But the big problem here, again, there's no fact check on a claim that's just so obviously wrong, not fact checked at all. And like, even if you didn't have the moderators doing it, like, have your graphics team go up and like put up a graphic at the bottom of the screen from your fact checker saying that what he said there was wrong. It seems so easy. Yeah, I don't know. It's infuriating.
One thing I just thought about is about the fact checking thing is it's possible that the Trump campaign actually like tried to petition to have that not be a part of the debate, or Trump threatened not to be there for that. Like, I could see that maybe there was some sort of negotiation.
We don't know that
sort of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. The rules were agreed to by both parties in advance of the debate. One of the rules, I believe it wasn't just that the moderators were allowed to fact check but didn't do any. I think that part of the rules was that there would not be any fact checking. Another thing that was agreed on beforehand is that there was a coin toss. The winner of the coin toss would get to decide either whether they wanted to go first or second in closing arguments, or whether to have the left or right podium. And Biden won the coin toss. He, for some reason, chose to have the right podium. I feel like the obvious choice would have been to choose whether to go first or second. And
yeah, we have a comment that I think we should
just a second, and choose to go second because you want the last word in the debate generally.
I guess
go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, go ahead.
So whoever left this, could you please be slightly more specific?
Yes.
Yeah, we will. If you have like a question about something specific that you believe Biden did, could you please list that, and we can absolutely respond to that.
Yep. Zack, go ahead.
No, I was just going to respond to the comment, which Charlie did.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So yeah, there was a comment that I found interesting, which is if Biden's advisors over-prepared him and wore him out. I think that that's very, very possible as to what happened. Honestly, I'm just collecting my thoughts on this debate from going through my Twitter feed to remember what I was thinking at the time. Yeah, I said halfway through the debate, like, the hope would be that people would focus on the substance and also realize that all of the substance Trump gave, which wasn't much, were lies, which means, in other words, we're completely screwed. Because that's not what the people are going to be remembering from tonight. He did talk about veterans, Biden did, and I think he gave a good answer on veterans. The question wasn't exactly about veterans, but he did give a good response about what his administration has done for veterans, specifically bills such as the PACT Act, which helps provide health care to veterans who were exposed to burn pits and other toxins. He brutally hit Trump for calling the military, fallen soldiers, losers and suckers, and essentially saying, why would anybody do that? Again, Trump, of course, dodged the draft by claiming he had bone spurs. But Biden, the line that really kind of stuck with, I think, a lot of people was, you're the loser, you're the sucker, you're the loser. And I think that is fair, obviously very brutal, but definitely a good part of the debate for Biden. Then Trump then, of course, tried to deny the very, very well reported incident of him calling military losers and suckers. Of course, he tries to just claim that it was just one phony report in a phony magazine. It was first reported in The Atlantic. But let's also remember, I think a lot of people forget, since it was almost 4 years ago, this report was confirmed by numerous people, including a Fox News reporter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and about the like Biden's comments like that, the times that Biden did sort of lean into Trump's flaws, I think, I was just thinking about this, how basically Trump's whole debate strategy was just attacking Biden constantly for different things. He, basically said nothing about really any of his own policy, like we already talked about, because he probably doesn't even know how that works. But the times that Biden really leaned into Trump, I think are what people are gonna focus on. Like, it could make him seem like he was just attacking Trump, even though Trump's whole strategy was attacking Biden. I think because Biden doesn't normally attack Trump in that way, it made him stand out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Moving on to the subject of Russia and Ukraine, Biden had a good opening on this section. I thought he did go after Trump quite a bit for his support of Putin in many ways, and also his opposition to NATO, and saying that, like, essentially the U.S. Trump essentially saying that the U.S. wouldn't defend a NATO country if they were attacked, essentially violating Article 5. I don't remember if it was at this point in the debate or later in the debate, but at some point Biden did also, he directly asked Trump, like, would you defend our NATO allies? Would you pull the U.S. out of NATO? Like, what would you do? Jake Tapper did not let Trump answer that question, but you could see Trump's expression. He kind of shrugged at the time, so not great. Trump, he was saying essentially, if he were president, Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine, and also Hamas would have never invaded Israel. We'll get to the second one later, but the first one, the first one he's right about. If he were president, Putin would not have invaded Ukraine. Why? Putin did not feel the need to invade Ukraine when Trump was president, because he felt like Trump was already there weakening NATO. He felt like NATO was not really as much of a threat, which to people who say, like, well, yeah, the problem is that NATO is too much of a threat. Let's remember, NATO is a defensive alliance. Their role is to defend each other, not to help each other go on offense. It's only if their homeland is attacked that the other countries can step in under Article 5. So NATO is important, and Putin, again, he did not feel the need to do this because Trump was, or when Trump was president, because Trump was harming NATO and helping Putin, which is also why Putin is supporting Donald Trump for president.
Which directly, like, dismisses all of Trump's claims about how, the world doesn't see Biden as, a force of any kind. And literally, what you just said basically proves that Putin feels threatened by Biden being president of the U.S. He feels that, the U.S. and NATO is something that he has to deal with right now in a way so violent that it's, starting a war. Like,
and that's a good thing, by the way. Putin should feel like he doesn't want the current president of the U.S. to be running the country because, again,
Exactly.
we're not allies with Russia. They're arguably our primary adversary.
Yeah, other than China.
Well, sorry, military adversary at the moment.
Yeah.
Economically, sure, our biggest rival is undoubtedly China. But yeah, so no, Biden he did hammer Trump on Russia, including I believe he said, "I've never heard so much malarkey."
Yeah, that was
so-
a line that I had to quote and put it on X. That was a great line. And real quick, I just wanted to interject here and say that one of the things that did surprise me in the Ukraine-Russia section was really the fact that I think Biden should have attacked Trump more on the whole Ukraine on his dealings in Ukraine in 2019, and I'm surprised that Trump didn't use that as a potential to go after Hunter Biden, which both of those surprised me.
He did go after Hunter Biden a little bit in the laptop stuff.
Certainly a lot less than I expected.
Yeah, it did seem that way. We have another comment here about Trump invited Russians to the White House. Remember the meeting in Helsinki? Yes, absolutely. This is, of course, when Trump essentially decided to trust the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the U.S. intelligence agencies on a world stage in the middle of, I believe, a press conference. It's a gross moment of many moments of Trump completely sucking up to Vladimir Putin. So that's obviously and just another example of the way that, I mean, Trump eventually did say, like, he thinks that no, Putin. No, we can't accept a deal where Putin just
takes Ukraine.
Yes, exactly. Sorry,
or takes at least a good chunk out of Ukraine.
Yeah, the chunk of Ukraine that he has. But sure, that's great. But at the same time, like we would like. Okay, apparently I'm slipping up worse than Biden.
Colin is becoming. Colin, are you doing a Biden impression right now?
Apparently, I'm doing a Biden impression at the moment. Where like I don't actually believe that Donald Trump would hold a firm line with Putin. He would have a red line because we saw in his first term he sucked up to other world leaders that he saw as stronger than him numerous times. Moving on from there, Charlie, there was some talk about Gaza.
Yes, there was. This was interesting to me. Trump claimed that Hamas would have never attacked Israel if he was president. Colin, I want your thoughts on this. One, what does Trump think that he could have done differently to prevent that? And two, how did Biden respond? Or what did you think of Biden's response?
Can you remind me of his response?
Well, the reason I'm asking you is I'm not quite sure what Biden said, so I want to make sure in an effort to not say anything wrong. I want to see if you remembered exactly what he said. But
no, it would have been a good
did feel a bit glossed over, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would have been a good follow up to ask, really, Mr. Trump, what would you have done differently in terms of in terms of Israel, Palestine, that would have not had this issue emerge?
Well,
but that was never asked. This probably still would have happened. It's happened constantly throughout history that there's been tensions between Israel and Hamas. I do remember Biden's response on this issue. He mentioned the plan that he has, the one that Netanyahu has agreed to about the temporary ceasefire with exchange of hostages, and then working towards a longer ceasefire, and then eventually a two-state solution. The one that he kind of hammered Hamas for not accepting, saying that Hamas was the only reason this war was still going. That's correct. Is that going to lose him support with young people? Yes, probably. Maybe, but at the same time, why should he care? Because frankly, if you're supporting a terrorist organization, then maybe your vote actually shouldn't be that important to the Democratic Party.
Yes,
but that's another issue.
Well, but that doesn't make it not important.
No, it's still important because he needs every vote that he can get, especially after his showing tonight.
Yes,
I do real quick did want to discuss something that I did remember, that did Trump not call Biden a Palestinian at one point?
Charlie, is that your Discord going off in the
That is
background?
that is my
Yes, it is.
apologies.
Yeah, I think he did call Biden a Palestinian. I think he called him like the worst Palestinian of all time. To which the Onion essentially responded with a joke I found in poor taste, which essentially said, "Yes, he's the worst Palestinian because he's still living."
Oh,
Which,
that's
yeah.
Oh, really?
wow.
Yes.
Oh,
That's a big fail on the Onion's part.
that is generally I
had some
find the
issues
things that the Onion
recently.
says pretty funny, but yeah, not that
Not
one.
that.
That's
Not.
kind of a dud right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to bring up a point that someone that I don't generally agree with said. It's Ilhan Omar, which is that he said, "We have a convicted felon running for president of America, and the moderators haven't asked why Americans should vote for him. It's super weird to treat this debate as normal and not address the elephant in the room." Yeah, this was kind of my main problem with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, how they moderated this debate, is that I mentioned this earlier. Yeah, we can't treat this like a normal debate.
Absolutely not.
Another comment from Morris
should we go
Phillips
back
here.
and talk about the golf thing?
In a minute, we'll get there. But another comment from Morris Phillips: whenever Trump speaks, please remember that his projection is a confession. Yeah, that's kind of what I said earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely correct, though. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Another thing on the Gaza thing, he was asked about. He supports the creation of an independent Palestinian state. Trump's response was, "We'll have to see." Maybe you should actually have a position on that. Just my personal thoughts. Of course, that's going to be glossed over in favor of the clip of Biden saying that we beat Medicare. But finally, then, Charlie, almost 40 minutes into the debate, we finally got to the issue of January 6th.
And then very rapidly left the talk about January 6th.
Yeah, although, again, Trump did talk about Biden for going after his political opponents. Very rich coming from him.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought also they didn't spend enough time talking about the insurrection either, and
No,
especially Biden did not leverage that point enough.
He really needed to, and he absolutely just didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Trump also, remember, I believe that the first question about January 6th went to him, and I think he immediately pivoted to Russia, if I'm remembering correctly.
I believe, yes, I believe he did.
Never even entertained a thought about that. So
Which is, I don't understand why
the
he
fact
would
that
have done
he
that.
again got away with that is insane. Another good comment, just a general takeaway about the debate, is from at Zack Camp on Twitter. Substantively, what Trump is saying right now is insane, but it's completely overshadowed by Biden seeming very, very old. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Biden, there was one candidate in this debate who seemed insane and one candidate who seemed insanely old.
That is a very good way to put it.
Yeah. Trump also, when he was talking about political violence, this was in the January 6th section, he was talking about, remember, the riots in the summer of 2020. He talked about how big of a disaster Seattle was, which was just a good opportunity for me to say to Donald Trump, keep the name of my city out of your criminal mouth.
Yeah. There's another
Guys,
word I'd like to say as well, but probably not good for a live stream.
No, and we know what that is.
Hey guys, you were both in the city of Seattle in the summer of 2020. What did you guys think? Was it super dangerous?
Well, I was at my house the entire time because of COVID, so I don't actually know.
Well,
Yeah.
fair enough. But Zach?
I mean, sort of same thing, but no, I mean, not really. I mean, not more dangerous than other cities in the country, I feel like.
Yeah, sure, there were riots around the country. Not great. Also, been condemned by Biden too. So don't pretend that these are his supporters. These were agitators.
Yes.
The riots in the summer of 2020 were not good. And in Seattle, of course, the big one, the one that everyone is still talking about, is that the Capitol Hill occupied protest, or whatever you want to call it, up in Seattle. it was essentially this area that the police just essentially just ceded to the protesters for a good couple weeks that
Yeah.
they eventually took back after a shooting there. Look, it wasn't a terrible idea to start. It was actually pretty peaceful for a while, and the presence of police was the main agitation, which is why they pulled back. They just let it go on for way too long because it was clear in the couple days leading up to when the shooting happened that things were getting worse there.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they were able to get the city under control. And again, to Donald Trump, stop talking about things that you don't know anything about, by which I mean stop talking about anything politically related and go back to playing golf every day of your miserable life that you're not spending in jail, which should probably be the rest of it at this point.
Is it finally time to talk about the golf?
Not quite yet. We'll get there when we get there. But this was also the section where Trump openly vowed for retribution. Now, this is also though where Biden finally mentioned that Trump was a convicted felon, something that probably should have been brought up by the moderators. And frankly, if I were Joe Biden, I probably would have started every single response that I gave with, well, unlike the convicted felon standing next to me, I did this, that, and the other. Or,
exactly.
the convicted felon next to me did this during his presidency.
Yeah,
don't treat him like he's normal.
I can understand.
Treat him like he's a convicted felon because he is.
I can understand why Biden would you think the Biden should have done that. However, I feel like that could very easily be turned on him with Trump saying something about Biden, about his age, about something like that. And I feel like in a situation where they're both basically just insulting each other, I think Trump would win.
Possibly. The other thing is when Biden did finally mention Trump's conviction, besides just blaming everybody but himself for it and saying that also that he didn't have sex with a porn star, which he did. It was pretty much proven in court. But he pretty much that's pretty much known. But just like he mentioned Hunter Biden's conviction. Again, a quick reminder just to everybody listening here. Hunter Biden is not running for president of the United States. No. And if Hunter Biden ran for president of the United States, I wouldn't vote for him either.
Nor would I.
Yeah. And I hope that most people wouldn't because he's not a good candidate.
Correct. And, a convicted felon.
And he's also just not a candidate.
Yeah, well, not a candidate at all. But this was also when Biden was talking about the porn star and other stuff like related to that with Trump. This was I would possibly argue Biden's best line of the night when he said, "You have the morals of an alley cat."
Yeah.
This was also when we finally got into one of the more pointless debates, another one that I think Biden took the bait on too much. Trump started to mention just how good of a president he was and called Biden the worst president in history. If you ask any historian, Trump is near the bottom, which I made that point on Twitter, and then Biden did a few minutes later too. He circled back on it, which I don't think he should have done. Leave that to Trump, and don't let that derail your argument. He spent just so much time talking about that, but it is true that a group of roughly 150 historians got together and ranked all the presidents, and they ranked Donald Trump as the worst of all time. Biden also here, he hammered Trump on Pence and something like 40 some odd cabinet level officials in the Trump administration refusing to endorse him, and as with many of them saying that he is unfit for office. What did you guys think about this part?
I thought that that part was certainly interesting. This is actually the one part of the debate that I missed. Unfortunately, I did see everything else about it. This is unfortunately the one time that I did have to go use the bathroom. But Colin, what are your thoughts from this from the part that I unfortunately did have to miss?
Yeah, again, Biden, if he wasn't mumbling so much and sounding raspy and all of that, I think Biden definitely would have won this section of the debate. But unfortunately, he did have all of that stuff going on really throughout the entire debate. So it was really hard to consider him a winner at any point. Although, again, as I've mentioned, he got better better as the debate went on.
Yeah, he did, which I think is a good thing because seriously, when I first started watching, which was already about a little less than halfway through the debate, I seriously I could not hear what he was saying, which is a big problem considering the things he was saying. Like once I turned on subtitles, the things he was saying for the most part were good, although like we've mentioned multiple times, he failed to mention Trump's flaws in very
As
major.
much as Trump mentioned his flaws.
Yes, exactly.
And
Like,
I don't even know if Trump mentioned Biden's actual flaws. He just made up a bunch of flaws, and again was very light on details.
He did at some very few points, but he did bring up a couple of things about Biden. One of the things that was surprising was he did not mention age as much as I thought he would. He did mention it a bit, but he didn't mention it nearly as much as I thought he would.
Well, they're not that far apart in age, and I think
the perception of them is.
No, age was brought up as a topic at one point in the debate too by the moderators, and I was really afraid that Biden would just completely stumble his way through that section. I think he actually did okay in that section of the debate. But anyway, at this point, what are we, like 53 minutes into the debate at this point? We finally got a commercial break, which was just a glorious moment. It was at this point we learned that Biden had a cold from sources at NBC News. A lot was being made of the debate at this point. This is another good comment. This was from the later portion of the debate. We'll mention this later. Does anybody else find it cringeworthy when former President Trump talks about black jobs and Hispanic jobs? It sounds like he's treating race as a job qualification. What do you think about this? Yeah, when Biden said that, and this was actually a lot of people were talking about this one. What exactly did Donald Trump mean when he said black jobs? I'd love for him to explain that one to me. What is a black job? And what is a white job? And what is a Hispanic job? What are those? And how are they different from each other? Go ahead and answer that one for me, former president and convicted felon Donald Trump. Although again,
there we go.
Because he would start rambling about, Russia and Hunter Biden or something, and the moderators would do nothing to bring him back on track.
He also seemed like he sort of regretted that after saying it, because he definitely did stop for a sec and
yes, he did.
That whole sentence kind of derailed after he said that, which it should have, because that was completely stupid and odd and just very just completely stupid.
Yeah, I think so. This was the section of the debate, I believe, they were talking about what it's done for black voters, which is especially important given that the debate was in Georgia. Now, there was not an audience in the debate hall, so less importance, but still important, and just important in general, especially for Biden, because black people are definitely what allowed him to win the presidency in 2020. There's been polls showing that a decrease in support. I'm not fully buying that, but he did say at one point that in the debate that, yeah, black people, they have a right to be frustrated, but this is what I've done, and this is what I'm committed to continuing to do. And that, frankly, for me, was such a big contrast between him and Trump, because Trump would never say, yeah, no, you have a right to be frustrated with anything that I may or may not have done. Donald Trump would never do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that section in particular was, I think, probably Biden's strongest section of the night. One of, if not his best section, one of his best, and likely his best. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, it was overall a decent section for him.
Which section was this again? Sorry.
About like black people, like opportunity. Also, Biden talked about essentially the what he gave to HBCUs, like how he helped HBCUs, black students, black people get jobs, which his administration does have a very good record on, although of course there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I think he did a great job in this section. Although I will say, I think in this section in particular, there were some times where the stuttering was actually particularly bad.
I also noticed that as well.
That's true. Yeah, it was interesting.
Was really good. But yeah,
it was interesting because I feel like right off the top of like the debate, and then right after the first commercial break was when his mumbling was the worst, I thought.
We do have another question, by the way, guys.
All right. Remember
yeah,
when President Biden was talking about
wondering
helping Black people with down payments? What program was that? I do not remember the exact name of that program. But
yeah, I was
it is
interested
something
in
the
that as well.
administration has done and is continuing to do.
Yeah, I was also interested in that because I thought that was actually a really cool program that I hadn't heard of that he talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah,
So
I'm not entirely sure. Trump, somewhere in here, he said that he had the biggest hurt on the stage.
oh yeah,
I'll let
Biden's
you guys
face was priceless.
respond to that first.
Biden's face was priceless, and I think pretty much said it all.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and just a quick tangent is I think that also shows just you can see that it's literally just his talking that's impaired because his reactions to what Trump was saying were
They were
very
phenomenal at times.
Yeah, they were, and they were.
I thought both of them had their reactions to some of the other things that they were that the others were saying were pretty funny.
Well, I thought Trump might have looked awkward at some times, like with his facial expressions. Biden maybe did a couple of times too, but no, Biden's response there said it all. Look, Donald Trump did not talk about you having the biggest heart. Remember the guy that mocked the disabled reporter, the guy that said that he prefers his heroes to not be the ones captured. The guy who goes on insulting rants about anybody who's dared said anything negative about him at any point. I'm sure you definitely have the bigger heart than a guy that essentially everybody who's ever gotten to know him has said is one of the most decent people they ever know, up to and including almost every Republican that he served with in the Senate. I'm sure that you definitely have the biggest heart on that stage. I'm sure of that, Donald.
Yeah. And don't forget the time he stood over the graves of dead veterans and insulted them, Just
again, let's
good people things.
Zach, there's a limit to how much I can bring up before I'm literally going until midnight and my voice is given out, speaking of which, it's midnight on the East Coast now, but we're here on the West Coast because, it's better for events like this. Don't ask me what time I'm going to get up to watch the Olympics in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll be live streaming those as well, by the way. So stay tuned for those, and don't forget to subscribe if you like this live stream for more of our sports takes during the Olympics.
We will be having an announcement about our plans for the Olympics coming up next week. Trump also he made some comment about this is a climate change section somewhat. Biden gave a pretty good answer about climate change, about the Paris Climate Accord. Trump essentially responded by saying the Paris Climate Accord sucks because we're paying a bunch of money that no one else is paying, and that's why I pulled us out of it, because the U.S. was getting screwed financially, which, again, this is why not everything when it comes to the presidency is a negotiation and is just about how much you're paying versus how much other people are paying, which is something that Trump obviously hasn't learned from his business background, but could serve him well. Sometimes you do things even if they're going to cost you money because it's really beneficial. This is another great comment on our screen at the moment. How about the grave of Trump's ex-wife? Yes, burying Ivana Trump, Trump's first wife, who again divorced him after he cheated on her. Burying her on his golf course so that he could get a tax write-off. Sounds like a very, very decent man.
Big-hearted guy.
We have an episode about that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, no. And that Trump said, I want immaculate water, and we had it, H2O. We had the best environmental numbers ever.
Oh, I love it.
Did he say H2O? Did he say H2O? Or I kind of think he said H20.
He didn't really fully finish that word, I feel like. But it's just priceless anytime Trump talks about science. It shows that he knows absolutely nothing about anything.
Anytime he actually has to say something about any sort of policy or anything.
Yes. And
again, his answers. The answers that we claim are policy-wise, like they were all like, no, we just had the biggest this, we had the best that. It wasn't, this is this program that I did. No, it was just, we had the biggest tax cuts. No one's ever seen anything like it before.
Oh, and
everyone was saying, sir, what a great job you did.
And don't forget to drink bleach as well.
Yes. Oh, of course. Biden did get on into that early. That's what happens
whenever he tries to talk about science. He ends up saying the most stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, that was. I mean, here's another thing, right? Is I think there's a good question that in this election, which is, were you better off than you were 4 years ago? And with Donald Trump, I think that Trump has tried to say that several times. I think it would be good if we all remembered where this country was 4 years ago. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We were all staying home. There were protests because a police officer knelt on the neck of a black man for 8 minutes and killed him. And Trump's response was to quote I believe was it a Jim Crow or was it a slavery era person from the Southerner, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. I do not remember the origin of that quote at the moment, right? And meanwhile, Trump was, having his rally in Tulsa literally 4 years and a week ago to this day, the one that he didn't require masks for during the middle of a pandemic, and it ended up killing Herman Cain. So, like, the country's clearly better off now.
And the answer to the comment is a lot.
A lot, and he was right every time. That doesn't mean that it did the job he was looking for it to do, though, because, again, he didn't give specifics on the fact checks. That had to wait till after the debate, and I imagine, right? Obviously, I'm not watching post-debate coverage at the moment, but I imagine that CNN had Daniel Dale on and he fact-checked a bunch, but half the people probably turned their TV off at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with debates and also just how the American public is interpreting debates right now is, I almost feel that we talked a little bit about like the dumbing down of American politics and John Kerry. You mentioned that, Colin. I think it's actually to even more of a degree right now than it has been in the past. Like, people don't really want to see any sort of specific policy. Like, what works in a debate right now, sadly, is stuff like what Trump is doing, which is ridiculous.
Well, and Biden he didn't go too heavy on policy, but he still probably went more heavy on policy than is best for a debate, which is sad because he didn't give a bunch of numbers. He and also, like, it's the type of thing, presentation these days matters significantly more than substance ever could. Again, very, very sad.
It's very much ethos pathos and not logos right now.
Yeah. Biden, he gave a good answer on childcare when he eventually got to that part. He started by going after Trump again for the worst president comments. It was good. It was not necessary, though. Trump was claiming that Biden would raise taxes by 4 times. False. Biden, in fact, has made very clear, if you're making under $400,000 a year, your taxes will not be raised by 1 penny. Donald Trump, sure, he's saying he would lower taxes, in fact, cut essentially all income taxes and replace them with tariffs. But again, tariffs work. It's not actually going to be China paying all that money. It's going to be the consumer with massive sales taxes.
Yeah, which is probably honestly going to just bring up food prices and prices of all kinds of different things, which he very frequently slams Biden for. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he blamed Biden a lot for inflation. Yes, he did. Some of Biden's policies, like, I would argue the American Rescue Plan did in part trigger inflation by giving everyone, like, the stimulus checks and all of the other money that he was throwing into the economy. Yes, but I would also argue it was necessary to stop a recession. And then I feel like since we've had the inflation, I think that the White House and the Federal Reserve have done a decent job of being able to walk the fine line with preventing a recession while also simultaneously lowering inflation.
Yeah, and
there were a lot of economists predicting a recession that just hasn't come to pass. The unemployment rate is still at under 4%. Biden's added, I believe, over 16 million jobs in his term so far, and wages are up in relation to inflation as well.
Yeah, and I love to just focus on like just how impressive that is too. Like we were headed for like a depression level recession, and Biden was able to basically pull us out of that. Like as much as people say, as much as Trump says that, you know, we were better 4 years ago, it's just objectively not true in any way.
Yeah, I think also, and we'll get to the comments on the screen in a second, but I think that there was a lot of coverage from the media, essentially blaming Biden for inflation and for the inevitable recession that was coming. And there was not a recession. The economy is in great shape. I feel like Biden has never gotten the credit
or as
the
much
same
credit
level of credit
as he should.
Well, no, even the same level of credit for where the economy is now compared to the criticism that he was getting for what was at the time considered an inevitable recession. Like, if you're going to criticize him for a potential recession, if you're going to say that's his fault, then it's certainly to his credit if that does not come to pass.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that he's to blame for either outcome, at least not fully. But if you're gonna blame him for one, you have to credit him for the other.
but they're never
going
going
to discuss the comment on the screen.
Oh yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The comment: Biden's Build Back Better plan could have been super great, but 2 senators killed it. Once from West Virginia and Arizona. Of course, that's referring to Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Yes, I was still impressed with how much of that plan he was able to get passed through the Inflation Reduction Act, but there were still definitely parts of that plan that he was unable to pass. Stuff like lowering the prescription drug prices. He was able to do that for people on Medicare, but not for everybody. He still says he's committed to doing that. $15 an hour minimum wage. There was opposition to that. Universal pre-K and 2 years of community college. There's opposition to that as well. Many things that Manchin Sinema opposed that he was not able to get done, as well as a whole ton of bills he could have passed regarding democracy, gun violence, you name it, that he was unable to do due to people like Manchin and Sinema refusing to vote to take away the filibuster in the Senate.
And good riddance to them, because they're not coming back, as far as I know.
I know that Sinema's running as an independent, and I don't think she'll win. And I don't know.
No, she's not running.
Oh,
neither of them are running.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is she stopped
Neither of them are running.
Is Manchin not running?
Manchin's not running. Now, I will say this. With Sinema, obviously, good riddance, because she also ran as someone much more progressive and then became this. Manchin, on the other hand, is as good as you could possibly get from West Virginia. And now that seat's going to go to a Republican and likely a somewhat far-right Republican. So,
yeah.
Like, you can blame him all you want, but at the same time, that's as good as you were going to get out of West Virginia. And you do have to give him some level of credit for the things that the Biden administration was able to pass, because if there was a Republican in that seat, Biden's agenda, at least his legislative agenda, would be nearly a zero, I think.
So, I guess I was about to ask the question, do you think it's better to have two sort of non-Democrats or who really don't help the Democratic Party very much other than, well, or at least it's very iffy whether they'll actually be on the Democratic agenda or not. Or would you rather have one fully Democratic congressperson and another who is fully Republican?
I mean, I think that's about what we're going to get after this
I think we should
election.
get back to the debate, guys.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think it's a worthwhile point to ask, especially since we're responding to these questions. Yes, Trump carried West Virginia. West Virginia is not in question for 2024. With Manchin not running in the Senate, a Republican's going to win that seat. The only question is whether it's going to be a more moderate Republican or a far-right Republican. And of course, Trump is going to carry West Virginia as I think every Republican this century has done so far, I believe. I've seen some comments after this debate from people the likes of Steve Schmidt saying that Biden will be a one-term president. He still has the chance to watch a Democrat be inaugurated. There are 68 days until the DNC. Whitmer and Moore, as in Gretchen Whitmer and Wes Moore, would beat Trump. Reminder that this is the fool who ran Dean Phillips's campaign.
Yeah.
That's saying this. So remind me why I'm taking political advice from him.
The guy who did worse than Good Space Guy, which probably, if you're probably our viewers are not familiar with who that is, but
yeah,
go back and look through our social media feed, because we had our fun roasting Dean Phillips for his performance in the primary. He ran a really, really terrible campaign. Late in the debates, Trump also brought up how Biden essentially was compromised by China, was bought by China. So I believe that Trump actually had secret bank accounts in China that were reported on by the New York Times. And then also Biden, with what he's done with the CHIPS Act and bringing a whole bunch of manufacturing jobs to the US, has actually hurt China. So, but
all right.
guess what? That wasn't fact checked.
Should we get to the golf thing?
I think we're very, very, very close to being there. Another thing that was really annoying from Biden is that Trump he launched a line of attacks against Biden, essentially all projection, but it was all stuff that Biden could have easily attacked him for earlier in the debate. But now Trump's falsely attacked you for it first. At that point, you're kind of stuck.
Do you want to start the golf talk, Charlie?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we? So the debate, kind of towards the end here, basically devolved into an argument about which of the two of them is better at golf, which I don't know how that happened. I don't know how that was allowed to happen, but it was also incredibly funny.
What, guys,
no, it wasn't though. It was wasn't.
Something that I think it was funny in a really depressing sort of way, because it's beneath presidential candidates to be just talking like that in general and insulting each other in those ways. It's petty and it's stupid, and it's beneath, I think, the level of presidential candidates. At the same time, I think it was amusing, the actual substance of what they were saying.
Yeah, and I mean, towards the end of the debate, the people who were both Biden and Trump just stopped answering the questions. They were just going after each other, and I think that they're very lucky that the debate was 90 minutes, because it just fell apart at the end.
Yeah, it really did.
All right, I think that my audio is working again.
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, great. I switched to a different mic, but it means without headphones, so we'll see. Trump brought up the cognitive test quite a bit early.
The dementia test. I feel like we should call it what it is.
He said that Biden couldn't get through the first 5 questions. Yeah, he could have gotten through the first 5 questions. And Trump again talking about how his doctor, Ronnie Jackson, I almost called him what Trump called him earlier, which was Ronnie Johnson. How Ronnie Jackson said like that he aced it and that he was in great health and stuff. A reminder that Ronnie Jackson was the guy that was running the pill mill out of the White House, giving everybody speed. So this is definitely the guy that we should be taking medical advice from.
And definitely the guy that couldn't, maybe tweak results for the favor of the president. Definitely.
Exactly. He also, Charlie, in addition to the golf debate, Trump was also bragging about his club championship.
Yeah, as I said, towards the end of the debate, the entire thing basically just fell apart.
Yeah, no, it was insane.
Now
we did finally get to closing statements in the debate.
I did have a quick question about the last thing, which is, it doesn't really matter that much, but I am sort of just curious in general. Do you guys know, is Trump actually decent even at golf, or is he really just also exaggerating that?
I have no idea, and frankly, I don't really care.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just
your
curious.
golfing skills should not be the measure of who's the president.
No, that's not why I'm asking. I'm just asking because I want to know if he's lying about that as well.
So, essentially, what we've heard from everybody that's played golf with Trump is that he cheats a lot.
Oh, that's not surprising.
No, it's not surprising at all. Yeah, just like everything else that this dude has done in life, the only way that he has ever succeeded is when he's cheated. So he's not especially good at golf. It's not entirely surprising to me that that he won the club championship at his golf course, just like how the team Putin's on always wins the Russian hockey game every year.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So should we get to closing arguments?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot that was.
I think they were both
closing argument. I thought he, especially for a closing argument, he stumbled way too much. For Trump's message was essentially, "We are a failing nation." Wow, such inspiring words from someone that wants to be president of the United States. And again, this fear tactic, the tactic on all the doom and gloom, it's a break from norms, and frankly, it's kind of gross.
Well,
I think that
just a real little stat for you guys, by the way, real quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
The Biden Twitter account tweeted 23 times during the course of the debate.
Well, yeah, that's because he's not the person operating that account.
Well, yes, no, well, that's obvious. I understand that, but I do think that's amusing that I actually was seeing while I was posting things on X that I saw a couple of his posts right after he said them in the debate, which I think that is a very good strategy. As he wasn't super clear with a couple of things he said, I think that is a very, very good idea.
Yeah. So we've all said that Trump probably won this debate. There's a different opinion that I found from probably my favorite comment I've seen about this debate from @BrennanJP on Twitter/X. So the real winner of this debate, Charlie, Greg Berhalter. Incredible air cover. I've never seen a timeline pivot harder from one topic to another.
Nice.
For those who are unaware, Greg Berhalter is the coach of the United States men's national team, who in Copa America lost to Panama. Yep, you heard that right. And now have to probably beat Uruguay. Actually, probably beat Uruguay by a lot in order to advance to the knockout stage. In the group that contains the likes of Bolivia and Panama.
Lovely. We are really going downhill, and apparently.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Trump's not wrong. Maybe we really are a failing nation.
So here's the solution: we put both Trump and Biden on the national team.
Oh, I'm sure that they're good at soccer.
They can win another club championship.
If Trump being on the soccer team means he's not president, then you know what? I will take it.
He can do both. It's like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. So wait. So here's an idea, guys. What if in say October or something, or what if like in September, when the next debate is supposed to be but is definitely getting canceled? What if we do a mock debate? I play Biden, Charlie plays Trump, Zack can moderate.
Why am I Trump? But fine.
I think you'd be good at it, and I think I'd be better at Biden than Trump.
One, I think that's a great idea, and two, that is an awful idea.
I think it would be funny and interesting.
We'll see. Yeah. So, should we get to Biden's closing argument, and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, actually, Colin, I did want your thought on Biden's closing statements before I share my thought.
It honestly mostly went over my head.
Same here. No, absolutely same here. I listened and understood what Trump said, and then just the part the Biden had just completely flew over my head.
And also by the time that the moderator said closing arguments at this point, I was pretty much done with the debate. I was like, I'm gonna prep for the live stream now. So,
all right. So should we share our closing thoughts then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I think that over the next couple of weeks, we're really going to have to watch the polls because I think this is going to be a very big hit for Biden. I think, as I've stated throughout this entire thing, I think that he had the better arguments in terms of substance, but in terms of how it was portrayed and how it was displayed and the confidence level that was shown, I think Trump certainly won. And I think overall, Trump certainly won this debate. And I think he's going to see a fairly big boost in his ratings and in polls over the next couple of weeks, which we'll see. If they start to die down again, that's great news for Biden. If they don't, he could be in trouble, and we might have to do another debate for Biden to gain back some ground.
I don't think Biden wants to do another debate unless maybe he can find different advisors to help him prep for it, or that the advisors get a lot better. I think my closing takeaways, obviously, Donald Trump won this debate. The question is, how much does it matter? We've seen presidential debates in the past haven't mattered a ton, and we've also seen like this is even further before the election. So there's a real chance that it just doesn't matter at all. So that's the big question for me. And a great example of this too, the John Fetterman Mehmet Oz debate back in October of 2022. This was after Fetterman had his stroke. He looked very, very bad. He won on substance, but the narrative afterwards throughout the country and throughout Pennsylvania was, oh my God, Fetterman looks somewhat unfit for office after the stroke. It didn't end up mattering. Fetterman won that race. So we'll see if that's something similar here. We'll see if how many people were tuned in and how many people had their opinions changed on these candidates. I know that, again, a lot of people that I saw that have like never tweeted about politics were tweeting about just how sad this debate was.
Yeah, it was a lot of sports athletes and such.
Exactly. Just how sad it was for really both candidates today, how there have to be better options as a country, which sure, you could vote for RFK and the brainworm, but I'd advise you not to do that. It's another reminder though, sure, the Biden look he did not seem at the top of his game, but substance is ultimately the most important thing that matters. I don't think a debate in general is the best representation of how candidates do, and I think it's important to look at the accomplishments of both of the candidates, and that one of them tried to overthrow the government and is calling for the suspension of the Constitution, and the other one, among many other things, isn't doing that. And I think that you really have to just go from there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Zach, what are your last final thoughts here before we end out here?
I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I felt that this debate was, honestly, it was kind of a stain on American politics. It was, I think, again, just to reiterate what's already said, yeah, I agree. I definitely agree that Biden, what the actual words Biden was saying when he could get them out were very good for the most part. The strategy that he used against Trump was not very good. He was clearly unprepared, as we've talked about, and I think overall, again, like you guys, I think Trump won, unfortunately, mostly because of, like you said, Charlie, the confidence, and just he was speaking much more clear, which is just so important, which is unfortunate for Biden, but it's true that if people can't hear what you're saying, then it just doesn't make as much of an impact. I think that yeah, and those were my main thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I realized that our response actually went on longer than the actual debate did.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Also, we're younger than both of these candidates, so I think we have the stamina to go on for longer.
We're also not 35 yet, so in no way vote for any of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
maybe two, because it seems like the
guys, somebody to legal arrest them.
Guys, we can't vote.
We know people who can, though.
Well, Trump won't be able to vote when he gets convicted, and yet he'll still be able to run for president. So,
I think that Florida laws are technically only that if I think it's based on like what the laws are in that state, and I think in New York felons can vote, so I think he'll technically be allowed to vote, which is unfortunate. But it's not like Florida's a battleground state where anymore. It used to be, but Democrats have lost that mostly, I think, due to the shift in how Hispanic populations have voted, which I think has mostly been offset with the way that Biden has been, and Democrats have been able to gain in the suburbs, and particularly amongst women, with especially on the issues of abortion, as well as numbers with young people, which again is really important, especially if they see this debate as just another sign that we just have that it's just not comfortable voting for any of these people because they're too old. That could definitely be a bad thing for Biden in some constituencies that he really needs to win.
Absolutely. Well, I think that'll do it, guys.
Yep. Any last thoughts from anybody here on the team?
Nope. I've said what I want to say.
All right. Well, with that, thanks for joining us on this live stream of C&C Talks. After this presidential debate, we'll have a new episode of C&C Talks dropping soon, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, more information about future live streams coming up soon. To learn more about that, go to our website, cctalks.com. Join us on Discord, cctalks.com/Discord. Follow us on Twitter at cctalkspodcast. Follow Charlie at cctalkscharlie. Once again, everybody, thank you for joining us here on this live stream. For, I guess, entire team. Morris unfortunately couldn't be here today, but for Zack and Charlie, I'm Colin.
I'm Charlie.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here. See you next time.